about one of the things I'm most grateful for from my youth. So, I'm still pretty youthful, I think. I'm almost 30.
Yeah, you are.
I'll be 30. No, I'm sorry, I'm 30 this month. Yeah, I just turned 30. Anyway, so my dad is a pastor. He's been a pastor almost my entire adult life, like the whole time I have a memory, which really starts at like 7. My dad's been a pastor, and it's always been a blessing, and it's always been a challenge having my dad be a pastor, because sometimes I just wanted time with my dad, like just your father, not pastor. And then so growing up all the way, I'll tell you, until I was like 21 years old. So now I moved out of my parents' house. Like after I was 17 years old, I moved out at 17. And until 21, I never appreciated what my dad was doing, what my dad was protecting me from, what my dad was trying to teach me. I just thought he was stubborn and hard on me. Until I was 21, and I was like, man, I started to meet a lot of other guys who were struggling with a lot of, how open can I be here?
You can be as open as you want, Steve.
Okay, I was meeting a lot of other guys who were struggling with a lot of struggles in life. Like, you think about guys that are fooling around with women, and then having children, and they're not married, and then having to pay the majority of their paycheck every month to just support their responsibility, which is their children. Or you think about guys that are spending all their money on alcohol. And I'm not saying I'm better than them, but what I'm saying is, because of my dad who cared about my soul, because he thought of eternal things, I was protected and set on the right path. And I only can owe that to God, and I can only really owe that to my dad, because he was very intentional about the things he didn't allow me to do and the things that he encouraged me to do. So I tell him that often. And I bet you guys probably will feel that same way. I think you guys are probably more mature than me, because I see some godly men out here like Matt and man, I'm getting nervous. But anyway, Matt, I can't even remember your name.
Just the old man.
But Jim, Jim, Matt, Jim. I know other guys. You're Scott's son. I know Sears' son is out here. Like, these are guys that I feel like they're definitely even more intentional than my dad might have been. So I encourage you guys, when you start to notice, thank them, because it means a lot. Because I'm learning a couple scriptures about, being a dad. I'm learning more scriptures about what it means, what I should be doing, what God has told me I should be doing as a father. So some of them that come to mind is like Ephesians chapter 6, verse 4. It says, "Fathers, do not exasperate your children. Instead, bring them up in the training and instruction of the Lord." So like, don't frustrate your kids. Don't work them too hard. Don't make them resentful of you, because that's how God He knows that we're bent towards that as men. So, I just have to be more mindful not to be too tough, but tough enough, And then I think about another scripture in Deuteronomy chapter 5, verse 6. Chapter 5, verse 6 and 7. It says, "These commands that I'm giving you today are to be on your hearts. Impress them on your children." And when I think about impressing them on your children, I literally imagine having an iron in my hand and ironing these things to my kids, And it's a little graphic, but that's the impression I want. I don't want it to be able to come off. And talk about it when you sit at home, and when you walk along the road, when you walk along the road, when you lie down, and when you get up. So the principle is, do this stuff all the time. And that's something I'm asking God to really help me with, because I've got 2 wonderful children and I'm responsible for shepherding, and I want them to be in a better situation than I was. And I'm asking God to do that. I can't do it by myself. So that's kind of some of my thoughts on what God's really been talking to me about lately. But I know Jim you mentioned that you were interested. You know, he mentioned I'm a Marine. I was enlisted, and now I'm an officer. And some of you guys are really close to, you know, adulthood, the way we define adulthood here in America, which is 18, right? So some guys are interested in the military, some guys are interested in the police department, some guys are interested in flying. Who is interested? You're interested in Civil Air Patrol, right, Nicholas? Right? Okay. So, you know, no matter what it is, I'd say be thoughtful in how you want to attain that goal. But for me, I always wanted to be an officer. And I enlisted because I was dating my now wife. We've been together 13 years, we've been married 11 years. But I had the opportunity, I applied for a lot of schools in Georgia, because I'm from Georgia. And I applied for Georgia Tech, I applied for Georgia State, and Morehouse. 3 really good schools. I did not get accepted to any of, or I was accepted, but I didn't get the scholarship that would have given me a full ride. And allowed me to join the Marine Corps and become an officer after matriculating through. But then I got a call one day, and you know, I'm 17, get a call from this captain, and he was like, "Hey, is this Steven? Are you a poolee in Douglasville?" I was like, "Yes, that's me." He was like, "I know you got rejected for all the schools that you wanted to put in for, but if you want to come out to Florida, A&M, then the guy that we had who was gonna take the seat for the scholarship, he got in trouble. And if you want it, apply to Florida A&M and you'll get a full ride scholarship." But I was like, wow, oh my gosh, this is awesome, dream come true. But I was deeply in love with my wife, my then girlfriend. And I was honest with myself. I was like, there is no way there's no way I'm gonna put myself in the situation of being separated from my girlfriend who I intended to marry and be in Florida. I just wasn't disciplined. And I didn't think I was gonna be able to be pure sexually. So I was just like, nope, I don't wanna do it. Talked to my dad about it, and he was like, if that's why you don't wanna do it, don't do it. So I didn't do that. I just enlisted, and I had a good mentor who, and I'd say this is one big thing. If you can have a mentor who isn't your dad, find one. Because for some reason, we don't always listen to our dads. But find a good, godly mentor, or any mentor that you look up to, and take their advice. Because this guy told me 2 things all you need to do to become an officer if you enlist first. Because there's this thing called the MESEP program, which is the Marine Enlisted Commissioning Program. He told me, stay out of trouble and stay competitive. And I was like, okay, that's all I have to do. And I did those 2 things by the grace of God. And then I was able to commission after about 3.5 years. And boom, I'm here today, and I have no regrets. I think my time enlisted was a huge benefit to my leadership as an officer. I don't think it's necessary, but I wouldn't trade it for the world. But yeah,
So what would you say, I'm just gonna ask a question now, what would you say some of the challenges of going that route were, Stephen? Enlisting first and then becoming an officer? Because there's a challenge in every route you take, right?
yeah.
So what were some of the challenges?
So, I think to the point that the Master Sergeant, he gave me the advice, stay competitive and stay out of trouble. I almost got NJP twice. Once when I was a PFC, once when I was a Lance Corporal. So that's like E2 and E3. And NJP is like when, it's basically like if I was in civilian court and they were like, you screwed up, we're gonna discipline you. And like, most likely they take my rank, they take my pay. And basically I was just being hard-headed. I knew the rule and I wasn't following. I understood the consequences, but I was like, I don't think I'll get caught. And I got caught at least twice. So I'd say that's one challenge, is being young, and pride is a challenge. Besides that, I think we can get in our own way. That's really the biggest thing of it.
How did you feel about your peer group?
See, that's what I was thinking about.
Was that a challenge or was that easy?
It's so I can only speak for myself, but I've met a lot of Marines that are very disciplined and that want to do well and succeed as the world defines success. But I would say that those guys are few. As far as morally, there's a few of those guys that are trying to do the right thing for the right reasons. And they will drag you down, because one thing that the Bible says is in 1 Corinthians 15 verse 33, it says, "Do not be misled, bad company corrupts good character." And I hung around with a lot of guys that weren't necessarily good company. So it was a challenge to be around those guys, because you want to give into it. You want to give into drinking. You want to give into good thing we don't have to worry about drugs, because the Marine Corps says you can't do drugs, but the Marine Corps definitely encourages drinking. And then I'll just blanket statement it. They don't encourage you to be a good moral person, whether that's with other women or whether that's with honesty, integrity, and things like that. So I would say that was a huge challenge, and only by the grace of God, I didn't get NJP'd. I had guys that had no reason. One guy had no reason to look out for me. And he looked out for me, he stuck his neck out for me, and that's the reason why I didn't get NJP'd the first time. And the second time, I really don't know why. I really just don't know why I didn't get in trouble. So, yeah, 2 challenges right there. But yeah, you can kind of lose your motivation too if you're not focused every day on the goal. So that's really what I had prepared to talk about. And if you guys had any questions, I'm all about it. I'm an open book, and if I'm saying too much, I take feedback very openly. So just let me know and say, you know.
No, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing, Stephen. So now, if there's anything that Stephen just spoke about, or anything that you've had a question about or interested in, please ask.
If you don't mind. So you mentioned, you got that special scholarship. So why were you so sure that you wanted to just like accept it? Was it just because you know you loved her, and if like you know you loved your now wife, and if so, how did you know that you truly did love her?
How did I know I loved her? And the first part of your question was,
What?
you got the scholarship, and how did you know you didn't want to accept it?
Yeah.
Okay, so I knew I didn't want to accept it because I wasn't consistently walking with the Lord at that time in my life. I was always around church, but I assumed I was a Christian. I didn't make a decision on my own to say, I can do things God's way, or I can do things my way, and I want to do it God's way. And so I know, given where my mind was focused on serving myself and being selfish. So I knew that if I went to Florida, when you think about Florida, you think about beaches, you think about beautiful ladies, you think about, out on the water, you think about deep sea fishing, think about good Cuban food maybe. So I just knew there was way too many temptations for me. And I don't know why that was so important to me. I just have to say, because my dad had literally, when I think of things my dad told me, the things that he told me the most is like, children, obey the Lord, for this is right. Honor your mother and father, because your days will be long on the earth. So I don't know. I just felt like I needed to listen. And then how I knew I married, does that answer the first part of your question? So the second part, how did I know I loved her? So I knew I loved her.
How could you distinguish that between love and lust?
So that's a great point. I will tell you, I knew I loved her, but I also knew that lust was the most important reason why I loved her. So, and you're 100% good with me going.
Yeah. I mean, some aren't going to understand anyway. But you can
Okay.
you can share, and then maybe later more with Evan.
Okay. Well, for the guys that have already had the conversation with their parents, I was intimate with my now wife prior to marriage, and once you do that, your subjectivity, like your ability to really tell about the character of this person, it goes out the window, because they just gave you like one of God's greatest blessings, right? It's a great gift from God. You're not supposed to use it beforehand. You can ruin it if you do it beforehand. And I ruined it. So it just kind of like, it was like looking through, it's like if I had mud on my glasses or rose-colored glasses, I was like, ooh, this is love. So I knew I loved her because I believed in the capacity to love anyone. I think if you honestly look for what's best in people, we can love everybody. And I knew that for me, I always wanted to get married. I always wanted to have a family. I wanted a big family. So I just knew that this lady was really special. She was very kind. She was sweet. She didn't ask a lot of me, but she was appreciative for everything that I did. So,
Sounds like you also chose to love her.
yes, I definitely chose to love her, because I don't think, I hear about, people can have long engagements or short engagements before they get married, and for me, I didn't need, it was kind of long at that point, but I knew no matter what, I wanted to live the rest of my life with this woman, because what I understood about marriage at like the age of 17 and 18, because I got married at 18,
Wow.
right after boot camp. I just knew it didn't matter because of the commitment that I'm making to this woman, and because of how good God is, it's gonna work out. Because it's not something divorce is not an option. So she also told me she was a Christian, so I thought he had that same perspective. We talked about it, and she was like, no, I don't want to ever have a divorce. So I was like, somehow God's gonna work this out for my good. And I do love her. I think she's beautiful, and I thought she had good character. So I was just comfortable. And it wasn't so much, it was just trusting God more so with the marriage. But I'd say for the wrong reasons. There was good reasons and bad reasons.
Yes, sir.
Really good question.
And thank you. Yeah.
So I'll ask a follow-on. This may be more for the adults in the crowd, but that's a great description of getting married and choosing to love your wife. But the question is, does that mean ever since you've been married, it's been easy?
No.
Well, why not, Stephen?
Being married and raising children are probably the two hardest things I've ever done in my life. But it's what I've looked forward to the most. I've never not looked forward to it. That's a confusing statement. I have always been grateful for the opportunity to be married and a father. It's a great challenge, and there's huge rewards. I think Proverbs 17 verse 6 says something to the point. It says, children are the crown. Children are the crown of their fathers. And father, I don't know it, but if you are interested, look it up later. Now I'm gonna read it, because we're in no rush here, are we?
Sure.
No rush. So it says, Proverbs 17:6. Children's children are the crown of old men, and the glory of children is their father. And so for me, I just look at that as a huge opportunity to bless my children. And now to answer more specifically on your question, has it been always easy? No. I'd say for the first 3 years of marriage, there's this thing called a honeymoon phase, is what we've termed it in our society. And I definitely experienced that. It was all lovey-dovey. It was all dates, nice dates, and